in reality and pragmatically, there's no way that Brian Daboll can walk in that building and look at his team and go, the season's over. They got to play. They got to continue to play. And yesterday, in typical Giant fashion, unfortunately, over the last 8 years, it was one of the most bizarre losses that I've ever witnessed, and I think Giant fans have witnessed, because this is the first time, as we all know, this stat is out there, the first time a team has scored 3 touchdowns in a game, hasn't given up a touchdown to the other team, and lost the game.
Yeah, that's a historically bad.
I mean, that is insane. And now this is 6 out of the last 8 years where they have started 0-2, and it's a sense where I think if you are a fan of the team, and I'm not a fan of the Giants, I want them to do well. I love it when they do well. I love being here when they went to the Super Bowl for 2 years, and it was an unbelievable ride, and it's so much fun to be able to talk about winning football teams and how they won and unexpectedly winning games that they were expected to lose during those times under Tom Coughlin. But since then, it's been nothing but instability. It's been crazy. It has been a revolving door of players and coaches, and now this is another reflection of that. And what happened to them yesterday with the kicking situation in Graham Gano, I was trying to think, in my career, like, did that ever happen to us where a kicker got hurt? And all I really remember, in Cincinnati, we had Jim Breach. And Jim had a pretty good leg from 48 yards in. He wasn't really a long kicker.
Okay.
So we had a backup punter. His name was Lee Johnson, and he would always attempt the longer kicks. Like if we had at the end of a half or an end of the game, we had like a 62-yard field goal attempt or something, Lee would always do that. And Lee could kick, if Jim did get hurt, he could kick extra points, he could kick medium field goals, and he would be effective at that. Most times punters are that backup kicker on the team, or you may have somebody who was a kicker in college or in high school that you may have kickoff tryouts or field goal tryouts during training camp or something like that. What happened to the Giants yesterday doesn't really happen in the NFL all that much. And if Graham Gano was somewhat injured going into the game, then there is no excuse not to have a backup kicker on the sideline.
Yeah, or know that Jamie Gillen can do the job, which to me, this was the most confounding thing. So you have the spotlight on Daniel Jones last week and the heat and everything on Daniel Jones. Because of this kicking situation, the way they lost this game, all of it now moves away from Daniel, who didn't play all that poorly, right on to Brian Daboll, and mostly because of this. And this is the thing that drives me nuts. So Graham Gano, he's hurt. After that first touchdown, you've got how many 2-point plays that you work on that are similar plays that
I would say, yeah, you got a handful, 4 or 5 plays that you can run at a different personnel groups and formations
that you practice.
Yes,
that are probably also. I mean, I may be wrong, but also in the offense when you're trying to get 3 yards on a 4th and 3 or something like that. These are plays that you practice all the time.
Yeah, the only difference about that is the length of the field that you have.
Sure,
that's all.
Right, but like. So you practice that all the time, and your offense is out there, and you just scored a touchdown. But let me send the punter out there to try to kick an extra point when I have no idea if he's going to be able to do it or not.
I'm sure they knew that he could attempt to try.
But they never went back to him. Yeah, so they were like, okay, he missed. He can't do it. Now we're going to have 2-point play. Just do it.
I'm sure he's done it in practice, but it's a completely different set of circumstances in the game. Now, all of a sudden, the nerves, the anxiety, all that crap is there, and I think once they saw what it looked like, they were like, we're not doing this again.
Well, exactly, but
yes.
they should have, to me, the higher percentage thing to do in that situation.
Immediately go for 2.
Well, yeah, on the first score, too. Now, I understand they were not successful throughout the game doing it, but still, it's the higher percentage thing because you've got your offense out there, you've got your starters out there, and that's something you practice where, Jamie Gillen is the, break glass in case of emergency situation.
Well, all right, so that's one part of the story, and it's a big part of the story because Brian Daboll's the head coach. He's the one that ultimately listened to Graham Gano and did not bring up a backup kicker. I mean, and I know that there are guys that are on the roster that don't play any, after the game, you see how many snaps they play. He didn't play. He played 2 snaps. He didn't play at all. Why didn't we have the kicker up if these guys aren't playing? The reason that they bring certain guys up is because they're hoping that nobody gets hurt, but they also know that maybe a guy's going into the game that's a little dinged up and he may only be able to play half the game or a quarter of the game. So they got to make sure that they have that particular position shored up. That's why they bring up who they bring up. And believe you me, it's not a thing that they don't discuss during the week of who do we think we're going to elevate. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And the coaches all bring, their ideas to the head coach and say, look, let's just say, Kayvon Thibodeau's got a thumb injury, and I think he can go, and maybe we got him for at least a quarter and a half, 2 quarters. Well, they got to bring somebody else up just in case that Kayvon Thibodeau can't make it through the game. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's roster management that every team goes through. And, I mean, this thing yesterday is so bizarre. And I think a lot of the angst coming from the Giant fan towards Brian Daboll has to be that the media was posting on X prior to the game that Graham Gano was not 100%.
Well, yeah. I mean, he popped up on the injury report on Saturday, and then obviously he ends up injuring his hamstring when he's chasing down Austin Eckler. But yeah, I mean, so it was something that people knew, and then he's out, and then they're asking him questions about it, and he felt like Graham Gano was going to be okay with the information that he had. He thought he was going to be okay. He was wrong. And now at 0-2, after the season they had last year, losing to the Commanders, who have no idea what they're doing right now. And this is a game you cannot lose if you are this point in the development of your program. If you're Joe Schoen,
if you're 3 years in,
Brian Daboll
versus the Washington Commanders, who are 6 months in.
Yeah, they got new owner. They got Dan Quinn there as a coach. Jaden Daniels running around juggling the football. I mean, they have no idea what's going on there. The Giants have to go in there and win that game.
Well, unfortunately for the Giants now, the other part of this is, the defense only gave up 7 field goals only, but they gave up a ton of yards. They gave up a time of possession. They didn't get any turnovers. I mean, those are the things that, ultimately lead these teams to everybody being close. If there aren't a lot of turnovers in games and turnovers aren't turned into points, then these games are all going to be close. You have a Singletary fumble, you have a Neighbors drop, you have like all the things that could go wrong at the most inopportune time. Basically went wrong for the Giants. I could probably point to like 5 plays on offense, and you could probably point to 5 plays on defense. And before you know it, you're walking off the field a loser, and you're 0-2 again now for the 6th time in the last 8 years.
Yeah, and it doesn't get any easier from here. And this is why we said, the entire summer and spring when the schedule came out, that they got to win these first 2 games, or at least get one of them, because after that, it gets much, much harder in the schedule. And they ended up losing both of them. So, I mean, even if they're 2-0 and we think that they're going to go on a run because the opponents get harder, I mean, at least they're 2-0 and they have a little bit of wiggle room and they found a way to win games. Although they're 0-2 now. And I know the Browns had a miserable week 1, but Daniel Jones and this offense going into Cleveland against what they can be, that defense in Cleveland is going to be really tough.
Trevor Lawrence found out yesterday.
Yes.
That's another, there are teams around the league right now that are stunned that they're 0-2. I wouldn't say the Giants are stunned, although we thought they had a good chance of winning both of those games, but maybe Minnesota's a little bit better than we thought, given the fact that they beat the 49ers yesterday. But these were 2 games where we all felt like that was the weight class the Giants were in.
Yeah.
And Cleveland wins a game yesterday that they needed to win, especially after losing their home opener and getting blown out by the Cowboys. And they did yesterday at the Jacksonville Jaguars, so maybe their season is a little bit righted. But again, I do believe that the first 4 weeks of this season, and any season for that matter, because nobody plays in preseason, is the preseason for the NFL. And I think these coaches are all still trying to figure each other out. And a lot of places like the Jets with a new quarterback are still trying to figure out what it's going to be like to play in high intense situations and learn each other. And I think the Jets found out a little bit more about themselves yesterday as Aaron Rodgers again shows flashes and glimpses of the MVP Aaron Rodgers that we've seen from Green Bay days. So he's getting a little bit more comfortable, and that was a great win for them. But this Giants situation here, and I again, are they going to go blow it all up again at the end of the season, depending on what happens here?
Yeah, I mean, and the most likely, and I understand that there's a lot of games left and things could change, but we've seen this a lot. The most likely outcome is that this team is picking in the top 5 again. That right now, looking at the schedule, looking the way that they play football, that they're picking in the top 5 again, which means that they're going to have another shot, probably, of drafting a highly touted rookie quarterback that they weren't able to do this past year. So what does John Mara need to see this season from the Daboll Shane regime to not hire Bill Belichick to do the rebuild with the young quarterback?
He wanted vast improvement. He wanted a marked improvement. He said that himself. And I will say that this morning and yesterday after this game was over, it's the first time that I actually felt like people are now starting to look at the coach. I mean, I think for the most part, everybody has appreciated the coach, liked the coach. The coach has been, gone through another defense coordinator, so that's changed. He's got this quarterback that is woefully inconsistent. And I'm not blaming anything on him yesterday. Threw 2 touchdowns, did not turn the ball over, ran effectively when he ran. So I'm not, it's not about him. This is about a defense that couldn't get off the field, although they only gave up field goals, which is okay. I can deal with that. And then, the kicking situation is just so bizarre to me.
Yeah, I mean, basically he thought...
And they may have lost anyway. They may, Washington may have kicked an 8th field goal.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen a lot. You're right, but I think what happened was Graham Gano wasn't 100%. Brian Daboll saw him, was like, all right, you think you can go? Yeah, I think I can go. And then a play injured himself worse. I mean, that's what I think happened. And it looks really bad because there was a prior injury where he wasn't 100%, and then he ends up getting a worse injury. So that's why it's on the coach. But I think that Brian Daboll's like, okay, he's not 100%, but he's going to be able to go and he's going to be fine. And
and then he goes on the first kickoff and gets hurt. Yeah. It's so freaking bizarre. It's unbelievable. And for the Commanders, they had lost 9 in a row coming into the game, which is so they obviously, this is the coach now, a new coach. So he had lost his first game, and now this is their first win as a coach quarterback tandem. And Jaden Daniels, they were getting rid of the ball quick. I mean, I think that they made a concerted effort to say, okay, listen, let's keep it simple. Let's get rid of the ball and let's get it out of our hands and not make any mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like that's the way that they were playing this game.
I mean, the Giants, I think, are going to be favored in 2 more games the rest of the year. And say what you want about favorites winning. I understand it's not all about that in the league. But just to give you perspective on their schedule, so you play 17 games now. They've played 2. So that means there's 15 games left. I think they're probably going to be maybe 3 if you throw the Colts in there, but I'm not sure. But definitely against the Panthers, and definitely most likely at home to the Commanders, because I don't think that team's that good.
With silver lining? You want a silver lining?
Yeah, give me a silver lining.
Even though he dropped the pass, and an important pass that he did drop, Malik Neighbors. Right. So, here's a guy who's got about 193 or 4 yards in his first 2 games.
Yeah, it looks good.
That is the second most amount of yards to start a wide receiver career.
Wow.
In his first 2 games.
I mean, it sucks that he dropped that pass. I did like his reaction, though, and how upset he was at himself, and I think that's going to fuel him. I mean, it wasn't the easiest catch in the world, but he's got to make it. But yeah, I mean,
superstar players make those plays.
Yeah, and he will. I think he will. I think that he's going to turn out to be a really good draft pick for Joe Shane. He'll be able to hang his hat on that. But I mean, we're gonna get tested. Like, that entire team is going to get tested. And Malik Neighbors is going to get tested for probably the first time in his career, being on a really bad football team that's meandering through a season where you might have a lame duck regime.
It's interesting just watching these rookies go through this, no matter what position they play. But watching Caleb Williams last night, he looked like he got ran over by a truck last night, and trying to make plays and doing things that just make no sense, and watching it and feeling the issues that they go through. The rookie quarterbacks in this league just get their asses kicked.
Well, yeah. And the Giants lost to one of them who didn't throw a touchdown yesterday.
And yet, Brian Burns had his first, sack, and what ends up happening? Penalty. You cannot. I mean, I don't know what that plane ride home was like yesterday from Washington. It had to be just miserable.
Oh yeah.
And I think that as this pressure builds, we have an owner here that listens quite a bit. Not I'm talking to us, but to his fan base.
Oh yeah.
He pays attention to his fan base. He's open to getting emails and letters, and usually answers a lot of people back, and tries to calm all the fears, and tries to be the professional owner that he's always been, and he's revered and he's respected. But, he's going to start hearing it now.
Oh, yeah, of course. And then this is not the first time. This has been a stretch now outside of 2022 where there's been a lot of bad. And he's had it, and he's annoyed by it. And we've seen him throw chairs, and we've seen him get sick about it. So, I mean, if they end up having 3 wins, 4 wins at the end of this year, and you draft a quarterback, I mean, is it going to be you handing that quarterback to Brian Dable and say, this is why we hired you? Do you say, Joe Shane, do your evaluation, this is why we hired you? Or do we say, hey, Bill, dust off the hoodie, come over here, and let's end this thing where it started?
Well, the thing that really, when I think about the Giants, of a legacy team, obviously in the NFL, the oldest team in the NFL, I understand it's an amazing run and an amazing longevity, and it's something to be really proud of, and they do have legacy players. There's no question about that. But when I compare them to another legacy team, it's a little bit younger, obviously, but for different reasons, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers go into Denver yesterday, play against a rookie quarterback, and they don't have a great quarterback situation. They don't have a great offensive situation. That 2 weeks in a row now, the Steelers have won such a Mike Tomlin Steelers type of game. It's ugly, it's nasty, it's defense, and they barely score any points, but they win. The Giants, on the other hand, find a way to lose. And I feel like those two franchises are the opposite ends of the spectrum in the NFL, where the Giants are losing games where they shouldn't be losing, and the Steelers are winning games that, maybe they shouldn't be winning because of their offense and how stifled it is and has been since Ben Roethlisberger left.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's why Mike Tomlin's been the head coach there since 2007, and the Giants have had 2007 head coaches. Right. I mean, there's just a. I can't explain this, like a culture. Certain teams have a culture, I think, and the Steelers probably, because of Tomlin now and Cowher before him, and then Chuck Noll before him, have had that stability, that Steeler culture. It's in a passionate fan base market. There's no question about it. But it's not as big as it is here. So maybe that's one of the reasons why they're able to overcome some of the things that they overcome and the shortcomings that they have, especially on offense since Ben Roethlisberger left.